Hi, my name's Mel and welcome back to Bookish Brummie. So today's video is a little bit different because I'm not going to be doing the weekly review of books I've read in today's video, and I'm not doing a deep dive into a book or any kind of summary. What I thought I'd like to talk to you about today is books that are on a DNF pile, so I do not finish pile. I see lots of people on YouTube talking about the TBR, like the to be read pile, and quite frankly every single reader has a massive TBR pile, but nobody ever really talks about their did not finish pile, like their DNF. So the reason why I thought I would talk about this today is because I've recently said, I think at the beginning of November, that throughout this year I've been doing a sort of reading challenge where there was a list of points which if I read the book and it hit that point, then I get to cross off that point, sort of thing. So points would be things like a reread of a favourite classic, read a classic, sci-fi book, a book that's got 3 words in the title and things like that. And one of the ones that I have left, so I think at this point now I have about 12 points left to get before the end of the year, and one of the points is a second chance DNF. So I've obviously left this to the really last moment, and I think that a lot of the reason for that is I'm not really compelled to try and read a book that I've already tried to read before and didn't finish it, because normally we don't finish a book for a reason. However, I sort of started looking around the house, and I have recently moved house, so therefore all of the books that I've sort of had spread around in boxes for the last couple of years while I've been sort of going between places, I sort of like fallen off, you know, off my sort of list of knowing that I even had them or that I'd even started reading them. And now I've actually unpacked everything and everything has been shelved. So I started going through my bookshelves and thought, I can easily tell actually which ones I've not finished because they've still got bookmarks in. And I was quite surprised of quite a few that I came across. When I sat and thought about it, I thought, actually, I can't even remember why I didn't finish that. Or I think I didn't finish that because I got busy doing something else. So it made me begin to think that actually, maybe the second chance did not finish point on this list that I need to do, maybe it won't be as hard as I thought it was going to be to do, because I've got to be honest, I'm certainly not going to advocate to anybody that you sit and read a book that you have no interest in reading, or you know, you've given it a chance and it's not for you and you're really not enjoying the story, or it's just not working for you, it's not your subject matter. Life is far too short to be reading books that we don't like, and there are so many options out there of books. I mean, just thousands and thousands and thousands of books out there that you can read. So I think it's always good to make sure that you check yourself and that you don't keep reading something that you're just not getting any pleasure out of. Why read if you're not reading for pleasure? I'm sure there's a lot of students out there that are going to say, well, you need to read for this. I know I used to be a student myself, and I've read so many books that weren't for pleasure and they were simply to write an assignment. But on this channel we're mainly reading fiction and we're reading for fun, so that's kind of like what I'm talking about. So here's my basket of books that I managed to find throughout my shelves that I've started at some point in the last 10 years and haven't actually finished. There's actually quite a few, so there'll be quite a few for us to pick from and go through. So I thought that we would talk about them all, and then maybe I can pick one which I'm going to use for my did not finish challenge, or second chance did not finish challenge. There's a bit of a mixture of books in here as well, because I think my reading tastes have changed over the years. So I think, you know, I did mention quite a while back, maybe in my introduction video, that I used to like to read a bit of rom-com type books, but I did sort of used to like sort of fantasy genre like Terry Pratchett as well. Now I haven't read Terry Pratchett for a very, very, very long time, and I'm sure I do still enjoy his books. I just haven't read one for such a long time, but I think when I was younger I would tend to read probably like Terry Pratchett books. I used to enjoy the Warhammer books, which I guess are like fantasy as well in a way, but I haven't read one of them in a very, very long time. And then I used to like sort of easy reading romance novels, and since then and you know, the odd classic, and then since then I think that my tastes have changed somewhat. So it may just be that, you know, some of these books now, maybe I didn't finish them because I didn't get time, but maybe they just don't really appeal to me now. So let's have a look and see what we've got in this basket and see, you know, do we think there's a chance that I'm ever actually going to read this book again? Now, I just want to say before we get into this that there's nothing, you know, really wrong with any of these books. I'm sure, you know, other people have loved these books, but we've all got different tastes. So, you know, if I do say anything about one of these books and you think, well, that's not like really fair, this is just my opinion. This is just how I felt at the time when I was reading the book, or what I can remember now of how I felt at that time. And again, maybe if I tried to read that book again, my opinion would have changed again now, because some of these books, it's so long since I actually had stopped reading them. I mean, I'd even forgot that I owned them. So the first book we're going to start off with is called About a Girl by Lindsay Kelk. Now, I really like Lindsay Kelk. I've read a lot of her sort of rom-com books. She does, she did like the I Heart City series and Shopaholic series. So I haven't read them all, but I read quite a few when I was younger, and I did like them. Like, they're a good time, they're a good read. Now, I remember this one because I remember I started reading it when I was travelling, I think, or when I was going on holiday somewhere. This was probably about 12 years ago or so. Let's just check, like, yeah, so this was published in 2013, like the paperback was, and I think this paperback had just come out, to be honest, when I started to read it. So yeah, probably about 12 years ago. So I think, you know, and that's how much I'd like Lindsay Kelk, actually. I've seen she had a new book out, probably in the supermarket or somewhere, and bought it. So it looks like I got to page 95, and there's like about 400 pages in the book. So I got to just under a quarter of the way with the book. And I think that the only reason that I stopped reading this book is purely because I think I read it on the flight, I read it while I was travelling, and then I think when I actually got on holiday, there was so much stuff going on, I didn't have the chance to read it. And then I think I got back home and got into work, and to be honest, like, at that time, I was only really reading when I was on holiday or when I was travelling, so I just think that I just didn't get the opportunity to pick this book up again. I read a lot more these days because, you know, my schedule permits me to do that. My schedule back then just did not permit me to read as much as I would have liked. So I can say there's fundamentally nothing wrong with this book. And if we look at the back, it says, I lost my job, I lost the love of my life, my best friend was especially annoyed, and my flatmate probably had a hit out on me by now. So yeah, there's this woman, and she's basically, you know, the way that they all start, like, everything horrible has happened to her. Anyway, she accidentally answers her flatmate's phone and ends up going on a photograph assignment to Hawaii on behalf of her friend, but I don't think that the people who are expecting her to arrive in Hawaii know who she really is. They're expecting her friend to be there, but I don't think they've ever seen her friend, so they don't actually know that the wrong person has turned up. So obviously we assume she's going to meet the love of her life there. Now, my tastes have changed a little bit, but I still think that I would probably enjoy this. And I do have to read a romance novel as well on the points that I have to, like, tick off this year. So I would say that this is actually a potential for that, because I don't own that many books, and I if I remember rightly, I think I was actually enjoying this. So I'd be willing to give this one another go. This is not a did not finish that has no mileage. It's a did not finish because of circumstance. Okay, the next one that I have in here is called Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. Now, this is like over 8 million copies sold worldwide at the time that this edition was published, and it's had a film, I think, made about it now as well. It's a very, very popular book. Now, again, Jojo Moyes, I have actually read some of her books this year. This year I've read The Horse Dancer and I read Someone Else's Shoes, and I enjoyed both of those books immensely. She's a good writer. So this one, I seem to have got to page 360, and there's about 490 pages in the book. So I've got to be honest, like, I was pretty much nearly getting to the end of this one. And I never actually bought this one outright. This was actually a book that my grandmother had given to me to read because she enjoyed it so much. Now, again, I would say she probably gave me this to read maybe 10 years ago. Yeah, I think she gave me this to read probably about 10 years ago. And it was around about that time of that other book, and I didn't really get that much time to read. And I remember I wasn't reading this on holiday, I was reading it around all my other commitments that I was doing, but I think I just got so busy, and then I put the book down somewhere, probably like forgot about it, and then just life carried on. That's not to say that my gran has not periodically over the last 10 years asked me, have you finished that book yet? Can we talk about that book yet? And unfortunately I haven't, so I haven't been able to. And then I have been aware that this was a did not finish in my pile, because she keeps bringing it up. And the only reason that I now haven't finished it is because I can't really remember what happened at the start. Like, I've got a general idea of this story, as I said, because I think I've seen the film as well, but I was really enjoying the text. So this is one that I actually really would like to read again. I'd like to start at the beginning, and then finally I might actually be able to have a chat with my grandmother about this book. So that would be nice. So I think that this one is a high possibility for possibly the did not finish category being finished. Yeah. So the next book I've got in here is called Audre Lorde. It's written by Audre Lorde, and it's called Sister Outsider. So this one I had actually started reading because I was in a feminist book club. It was a really, really good book club, and I bought the book, and I really only just started reading it. I mean, I am like 12 pages in, about out of 187. And the reason I did not finish reading this book, again, there was nothing wrong with the book, but all the spaces in that month's book club were taken up. So although I bought the book and I started to read it, I was never going to get into the discussion to discuss it with the other people, so I just put the book down. This is not, you know, an easygoing book. This is a non-fiction book. It's essays. So it's the revolutionary writings of Audre Lorde gave voice to those outside the circle of this society's definition of acceptable women. Uncompromising, angry, and yet full of hope, this collection of her essential prose, essays, speeches, letters, interviews explores race, sexuality, poetry, friendship, the erotic, and the need for female solidarity, and includes her landmark piece, The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House. So this is an important book, and I actually do really want to read this book, and you know, because I didn't get the chance to actually talk about it in a book club, that's why I hadn't finished really before, because I think this is the kind of thing that you read and you actually do want to talk to people about afterwards. So I again would say that this is a did not finish due to circumstance rather than there being anything wrong with the text. And I do intend on getting around to reading this, and actually now I've maybe started this channel, I can talk to you guys about this book. So I would say that is a high likelihood that I will get actually around to reading this one now that I've found it in my stuff. I'm probably not going to use this for the did not finish category this year, because this is quite a serious book, and I don't think I'm really in the headspace for this just at this moment in time. But I did recently buy another book on feminism a few weeks ago from Book 66, so I think when I come to read that, I might read this at the same time and just I might do like a week of it or something. So yeah. Okay, the next one that we have in here is her book called Witch Hunt by Sid Moore. Now this is a ghost story, I think. I got to page 200 and there's about 425 in here, so I feel like I gave this one a good go. Now this one, probably about 2 years ago, I think it's not my most recent did not finish, but yeah, it was from about 2 years ago. Again, somebody passed this book on to me, and when it first started I didn't really realise it was going to go into being a ghost story, and it was okay, but I still felt like it was a bit of a slog. It wasn't really written in a way that I kind of liked that much. And then there was like a point, I think, then where it seemed like voices or something from the past were coming through, and I was a bit like, I wasn't really expecting this. and just the way that it was written didn't really appeal to me. So I actively and consciously decided to not finish this. I don't feel that my feelings will have changed that much on this, to be honest, as only 2 years have passed. So I'm gonna say, because this was an active choice of a did not finish, that one's not going to fulfill the criteria this time. And I might not hold on to this book very long in my collection, to be honest, because I really don't think that I have any interest in reading it. If you have read this book and you really enjoyed it, then good for you. It just wasn't really for me at the time. We have another Lindsay Kelk. So we have I Heart New York. And again, how far have I gone this one? I got to page 52 out of 307 pages, so I didn't really get very far with this one. But again, it's the same kind of modern day romance story. So this one, our character is fleeing her cheating boyfriend in a bridesmaid dress and a pair of Louboutins, and she jumps on a plane to go to New York. So what happens? Basically she sort of starts having the Sex and the City experience in New York, I think. Now I enjoyed the opening to this. I find these quite humorous, these books as well. I think Lindsay Kelk is quite humorous in the way that she writes. So I have every intention of getting around to read this again. Again, like when I would have had this was not long after I'd started the other one. So I estimate I've probably had this book about 10 years. I don't think I was reading this one on holiday. I think I was trying to read it in my breaks at work. And I think that's probably why I just didn't get very far with it, and I actually totally forgot I had this book until I was unpacking stuff from moving house. So again, this one is a contender probably for romance story, because I think, you know, I don't have many of them, and I do need to read one of them before the end of the year. And I did like this series that she did. The next one we have is a non-fiction. So this is Paula, the story so far. So this is about Paula Radcliffe's career so far. But the book was published quite some time ago. So this was published in like 2005, 2004 in some places, and 2005 here. I had this for Christmas last year, so this is my most recent did not finish. And I have got to page 91. And from a story perspective, it's about 376 pages long. Now, this kind of trailed off. I was reading this because Paula Radcliffe is one of my heroes. I run myself, and I like to run long distance, so Paula Radcliffe is also runs long distance, like the marathon is her speciality. And she recently had a comeback in this last year or the year before, I think. So if you imagine that this was written in 2004, I would have been probably, yeah, I'd been about 17, 18 years old when this book originally came out, and 20 years essentially have passed since this book was written. So a lot of what was happening in here is before my memory. So all I really know of Paula Radcliffe is odd articles that I've read about her, and mainly is watching YouTube videos of her running on TV when I found the clips of that, or seeing her, like she quite often will come and stand and talk at the London Marathon. I think she's rung the bell at you know, before, and she sponsors a lot of younger people with their running. So yeah, I was excited to get this for Christmas, and I was excited to read about her story. But the reason that I just didn't finish it is I just found it a really hard read. It kept referring to what happened back in Greece and what happened back here, but there had been no explanation in the book up until that point about what had actually happened in Greece or what had actually happened in this other place. And it was quite dense, and there was a lot of very dense sections on training, like back when she was 17 or 18. And obviously we wanted to know about her training, but I felt like I've read books by runners before, like Alexander Vassos does some good books on his running, and Adaran Finn and Anna McNuff. They're like three people who write about their running experiences, and I've really loved reading their books, and I have got through their books and felt inspired, you know, to keep doing what I'm doing and keep running. And I've also found them like quite funny, and they were, you know, they were easy to read, and this wasn't quite the same. So I don't know if Paula Radcliffe has actually written this herself or if she's had a ghostwriter. I'm not sure that it really says. Oh, she's written it with somebody called David Walsh. But yeah, I just couldn't get to grips with it, you know. Like, I want to sort of sit down and be entertained, I think, when I was reading the book, or have a bit of an easier read than what it was. So I don't think I put it down and thought I'm gonna do not finish this, but I did think I need a break from this book, and then I picked up another book, and then I picked up another book, and then I picked up another book, and I just never felt compelled to come back to this. However, as I said, because she is somebody who I really respect in the running community, I would like to come back and try and finish this, because I do really want to read and understand her story, but I don't think I could sit down and read this book all in one go. I think I'm going to have to do it bit by bit, you know. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be crossing off the did not finish option for this year. The next one is an interesting one. So we've got Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Now, I was reading this, I remember this was about 8 years ago. I was reading this book, and I'd always thought, oh, I'd like to read that when I was younger, but I felt a bit intimidated. I mean, this is not a small book, you know, and it's sort of set in Russia, and it's, you know, a classic, which sometimes can be a bit scary. Now, I did read a lot of classics as a child, but most of them were set in like London, so like with Charles Dickens or, you know, Jane Austen and things like that. And whilst I had enjoyed Charles Dickens, I didn't really enjoy Jane Austen. I found it really hard to understand the characters. I had nothing in common with them. I didn't really get where they were coming from, and I didn't really understand their sense of humour. But when you think about it, it's like, well, they're set in a completely different century, you know, from the upper nobility class. Like, I had nothing in common with them anyway, and I just never really finished a Jane Austen, to be honest. Please don't come for me for saying that, but I just really struggled. However, I had read the premise of Anna Karenina, and I had thought, you know, I would like to read that one day, but I was worried that it would mimic like Sense and Sensibility or Pride and Prejudice in some way, and that sort of then put me off. However, back in one of the CD shops, I managed to get this for like £1.99, which is nothing for such a big book like this. But I also read good things about Leo Tolstoy, a very good storyteller. Now, I remember reading this bit by bit, and I'm actually at page 334 out of about 800. So just under the halfway mark, so I did actually make good progress with this. And I remember being pleasantly surprised while I was reading it that it was actually quite relatable. It was more relatable, even though it was set in Russia, than it was like when I was trying to read Sense and Sensibility or Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So that was a big surprise. And I actually found it quite funny. It was quite entertaining. It just seemed like a Russian telenovela, if I'm honest, you know, with, you know, people doing stuff behind their backs, and she loves him and he loves her, and there's a love triangle going on, and this, that and the other. And I was actually into it. But because the way that I had approached this book, because obviously it's quite a dense book and it's quite classic, and it had like worried me when I'd originally gone into it, I didn't just sit and like read it really quickly all in one go like I would with most books. I would read about 10 to 20 pages a day, and then, you know, move on to whatever else I was reading. And I think that because I was doing that, it just took me so long to get to where I was. I know I was enjoying it at the time. I think things in my life changed, and I got a different job, which changed my schedule. And then I met a new group of friends, I think, at that time as well. So I started like going out with them, and I didn't have as much time again to sit and read. And that's the only reason why this ended up getting abandoned, to be honest, was just circumstance in life, and it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying the book. So I can definitely see me getting back around to this. But so much time has passed, I am going to need to start from the beginning again, because I can't remember what the last thing happens. There's no point in me just reading it from the point where I'm at. As sad as it is, whereas I'm nearly at the halfway point, I will have to start again. But I don't see that being this year's book for the did not finish, because I just don't think I simply have time to read that, all of that, and I think that I would approach it in the same way that I did back when I was originally reading it, which is read about 10 to 20, I might stretch that out now to maybe 30 to 40 pages a day if I have time, but not all in one go, because I think that's when you can get a little bit fatigued with books like this if you're not really used to reading them and you're not used to that kind of language, like the classical language that they're written in. So yeah, we will finish this at some point, maybe in 2026, just not this year. And I have one more book in this basket. Now I'm saving this book for last because I would say that this book is very promising. I had totally forgot I had this book. So it's Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter, called The Long Earth. Now I have not really got too far through this book. I've got to page 64 and it's again about 430 pages, this book. So there's a bit of a funny story behind me getting this book. I remember I bought this book, I think it was in around about 2017, I want to say. Yeah, it was around about 2017, so we're talking like 8 years ago. And initially this book came in a set from a shop that we have in the UK called The Works, and sometimes they sell sets of books for quite a cheap price and you can get some really, really good books in there. And they had this series of this. Now, as a massive Terry Pratchett reader when I was younger, I was like, oh, there's some Terry Pratchett books that I've never read before. Now, Terry Pratchett's Discworld series is like fantasy series, whereas this is sci-fi fantasy. But that didn't really put me off. I was excited just to read something else by Terry Pratchett. However, I made the mistake of not buying it for myself. I bought this box set at the beginning of December, thinking I was going to give it as a Christmas present to somebody, which I totally intended to do. But then I was actually off sick work. I had an accident and I had to be off sick work for a couple of days. And I was sat in bed and I wanted something to read. And I was meant to be wrapping these and I was reading the back and I thought, I really want to read that. And then I started reading it, and obviously because I started reading I could give it to the person. As it transpires, that's actually okay because they are not a sci-fi fan at all, so they would not have enjoyed these. But yeah, let me know, have you ever bought a book for somebody else as a present and then they've never actually received it off you because you have started reading it yourself? And you know, because I obviously hadn't finished it, I couldn't give it to them for Christmas, but it probably would have been naughty of me to do that anyway because I'd already read it. So yeah, I'd started reading this while I had a concussion. So this is why we haven't got very far with this book. I had all the will to read this book and I was enjoying the premise of the story so far. I even remember, I think like the last thing that happened was somewhat to do with a potato. And it had, you know, it had a sense of humour like the Discworld books do. But the only reason obviously I didn't get much further is I had a concussion, and concussion makes you obviously feel really ill, makes you feel sick and gives you headaches. So actually I was sort of trying to read this and drifting in and out of sleep and taking paracetamol and not feeling very well. So whilst I've made a good start, never actually got around to finishing it. And then I went back to work and I was too busy to read. And obviously then with it being Christmas, there was lots of events on and lots of things. So this book just got abandoned and forgotten about. And I totally forgot I had this book, or that I'd even started it, until I finished unpacking my things a few weeks ago, now that I've moved house. So I'm actually delighted to have found this one again. So I would say that the biggest candidates for me to do a second chance DNF now would either be this one or Me Before You for Jojo Boys. I definitely think I'm definitely going to read both of these books. But I've got to be honest, I'm leaning more towards this one at the moment. Now, over the years, I'm not really somebody who DNFs a lot of books. You know, I admit to having read a few books way beyond I should have read them, because I didn't like them and I just kept thinking, this will get better, right? The reveal will get better, right? You know, and then you get to like 300 pages and the book's finished and you just think, oh, I just wasted my time with that and I shouldn't have done that. And I have got to be honest, I've had about 3 books 3 or 4 books like that this year, and I really should have just opted to did not finish them. I was just convinced that they would get better. So it's unusual for me to make a conscious choice to not finish the book, but I am trying to get better at it because I have so many books that I want to read that I would enjoy reading. So really, why am I spending time, you know, painfully reading books that I just don't, I'm not into? However, despite that, over 12 years, I can see here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books that I haven't finished, and I would say in 12 years that's pretty good going. And really, there's only 2 of them that I would struggle to read. One that I really don't think I'm interested in, that I said I'd get rid of, which is Witch Hunt. And then Paula, you know, I'm going to struggle to finish that, but I was interested in the story. But all the others, look at these 6. I'll just get them. These 6 I really just did not finish because of circumstance. So that actually really surprised me. So it'd be interesting actually if you were to go through your own collection and look at books that you've left bookmarks in and try and work out when you actually last read it, and you know, try and think about, did you stop reading it because you weren't enjoying it, or did you stop reading it because life got in the way and you forgot about it? Because actually maybe starting it again, like, you might actually find some gems on your bookshelf that you've totally forgotten about, or like I did, you might find them in boxes that you had forgotten about, because obviously, like with moving, you've got stuff everywhere. But prior to moving where I live now, I've moved around a fair bit, so I just didn't have all of my books on display until like now. So that was really, really good. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video because I thought it would be interesting if we had a look at my DNF pile and see, you know, what I could salvage out of that and what I might use towards the other reading goals that I've got on my reading challenge this year. Let me know down in the comments if you've actually read any of the books that I've had on my DNF pile. What did you think of them? Or do you have any books that you've recently found that you did not finish because of circumstance and you're going to go back to them? Or have you DNF'd a book a while back because you thought, I'm not enjoying that, and then maybe several years have passed and you've picked it up and your reading taste has changed and now you really enjoyed it? That would be interesting to know about as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will speak to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye!